the two elements. One obviously is the healthcare side, and it has all the information, background research, our research, published papers, etc. And then the other side, which is MysteryVibe, is very much driven by how do you improve your intimacy as a very overarching concept, which can be anything from giving each other massages, which has nothing to do with, a clinical problem, to
look into his eyes. They're the eyes of a man obsessed by
success.
Eyes that mock our sacred institutions. Bedroom eyes, they call them in a bygone day.
Sex desire is the most powerful of human desires. When driven by this desire, men develop keenness of imagination, courage, willpower, persistence, and creative ability unknown to them at other times. So strong and impelling is the desire for sexual contact that men freely run the risk of life and reputation to indulge in. When harnessed and redirected along other lines, this motivating force maintains all of its attributes of keenness of imagination, courage, etc., which may be used as powerful creative forces in literature, art, or in any other profession or calling, including, of course, the accumulation of riches. Napoleon Hill.
Hey there, peeps. This is Michelle Nedelec, and I'm super glad that you're here with us today because I'm here with my most amazing guest, Soum. Soum, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So give everybody the highlight of who you are and what you do for business.
I am Soum. I am one of the founders of MysteryVibe. I started MysteryVibe 10 years ago to solve the age-old problem of how do you keep intimacy and mystery in the bedroom after major life events like having a kid, having menopause, having cancer, recovering. And what we do is we bring together biomedical engineering and medicine to create devices, vibrating devices, and which help with pain relief, arousal, dryness, erectile dysfunction, various sexual health issues, and all of it by being very precise with the frequency of vibration and the location of vibration. So that's what we do.
Excellent. And you can tell that my day goes from one thing to another because my brain just kicked in and went, oh yeah, that's what and maybe you were listening to this, peeps, and your brain went, we're doing what today? Yeah, we're doing that today. We're going there. Awesome. So I am super excited about this because I think there is a ton of information that people need to know and understand about sexual health, and they're afraid to talk about it. And because of you and who you are, we also get to talk about your business of the devices. Let's go with that, and what's going on there. So lovely. For those of you who don't know, peeps, welcome to the Little Blue Pill for Business, where it's all about getting it up and keeping it up. And yes, we're talking about revenue and profits. We know it's all about the 6 inches between your ears. So I interview some of the hottest people in the industry that are blowing and going so that we can help you get in on some action. So if you like a little tongue in cheek and not just physically, this show is for you. And today, as I mentioned, we are jumping into bed with my most amazing guest. And yes, we are talking about sex and toys and tools and devices and all sorts of fun things. So we've jumped in the bedroom before with people, but this is kind of a little more literally. We're going to be doing this a little more literally virtually. So let's back up the bus just a little bit. How did you get into, and what did you call them again? Because I love the way you say it. It's a bio some.
Bring together biomedical engineering with, say, urology, for example. So how it works, I'll give you a very simple example is pelvic pain. So with pelvic pain, the most simple cure or therapy is to use 2 fingers, reach inside, reach the pain areas, massage the areas, alleviate the pain, and with enough therapy sessions, you get rid of the pain. So that's what OBGYN or PT, pelvic floor therapist would do. But it's not always possible for people to access that. They might not, they might not know who to go to. They might not have any PTs nearby, or they might not have the time or money to do that. So where we come in is we take that knowledge from the doctors. Doctors tell us, look, this is how it can be addressed. And then we bring in engineering by creating malleable material, bendable electronics, special material science, special motors to deliver the right kinds of frequencies, and put it together to create what would be the therapy, but it mimics it. It literally creates a device which mimics two fingers, and bends and reaches the spots, and very much recreates that, but at the one of cost, and making it accessible, and the convenience of you being able to do it yourself.
Well, and a lot of people don't recognize the pain itself, which to me seems odd because a lot of women think that it's just normal to experience pain, period. So I'll get into that in a sec, but let's go back to your bioengineering degree and how you got into developing this as a thing, like this whole business as a thing. How did this develop and unfold?
So my, like you said, my degree back in 2004 was in biomedical engineering, as in that's when I did my PhD in it. And my focus back then was on ophthalmology, working with eye doctors to create camera systems to recognize people's irises. So very different in terms of different body part, different healthcare, but the underlying principles are the same, where the medics tell us, this is what you need to know about the body, and then we figure out the electronics, the plastics, the materials, the software, the engineering, to do what the medics need us to do. So that was my first biomedical startup, which was acquired in 2009 by a California-based company. And then I wanted to stay in biomedical, obviously, but I wanted to focus on another area, an area which would have even bigger impact on the day-to-day lives of people. Something very significant, like cancer would be a really, valuable area, for example, or diabetes or heart ailments, because these are things that affect a huge percentage of the population. The area that we realized was very overlooked, especially 10 years ago when we started, was sexual health, especially after something major like having cancer or having surgery, or something very normal like having menopause, and something very happy like having a child. So, very simple life events, but can lead to very detrimental, can have detrimental effects on your intimacy. And there wasn't much information, let alone solutions back then. So it seemed like a really good, meaty area to get into, work for a reasonable amount of time, expecting it will take a while to build something significant. And then when it is significant and out there, it would help a lot of people.
Nice. Love it. So let's talk about the pain that women are experiencing, because again, I don't think a lot of women realize that it's not normal to experience pain. One, just from walking, sitting, standing, what you would think is pretty normal to not experience pain then, but a lot do. And they just think it's normal because, oh, that's what happens after I have a baby. Oh, that's just what happens after you get old. That's just what happens when, and it's kind of not true. So what have your clients experienced, and what kind of problems and pains are they coming to you with?
So the two main pains in female sexual health that we deal with is pelvic pain and penetration pain. So pelvic pain often is after childbirth from carrying a very heavy amount of weight on the pelvic floor for 9 months. And then the fact that it stretches and then contracts within a short period of time leaves behind scar tissues, often leaves behind scar tissues, which need to be addressed in order to alleviate the pain from them. So that's a major one. And then I would say equally important is penetration pain, which often comes from dryness, for example, after menopause or during perimenopause. And there are other areas like vulvar pain, vaginismus pain, which is also penetration pain, and then period pain. We haven't yet launched a product in period pain, which we are working on, and it will come out next year. But we have devices now for vulvar pain, penetration pain, and pelvic pain. So I would say in terms of the numbers, probably dryness related and arousal disorder related issues is equal to pelvic floor, which is often to do with childbirth.
Yes. Hey, and when it comes to kind of biologically figuring out how to resolve these issues, is it very much a kind of a template? Oh, if you have these symptoms, this is what's going wrong, or can it be a variety of issues?
It's definitely a variety, and we always tell people that, if possible, for your first consultation, go to an expert. Even if you can't, let's say, after having a child, maybe you won't have the time or resources to go 3 times a week for 12 weeks, which is, recommended. But if you go once, you get the training, you get a solution like one of our devices, you get, like a video on how to use it. That will make a huge difference compared to 100% self-help. So if possible, going to a clinician for the first appointment, the first consultation, is hugely valuable. And also, there might be other things that are affecting you, which you might not think about. So that's where we can't help, because we wouldn't know the individual cases. We can only write about what doctors give as generic advice, and with diagrams, with videos, with text, with lots of really useful information. But the best solution would always be to go see a clinician, figure out what is it exactly that you need doing in order to address the pain wherever it is.
And when you recommend getting the device and then going to the clinician, do you have your own clinicians that people see, or ones that are trained with your devices? Or
yes, so we have a lot of clinicians who are trained with the devices in major hospitals like Mayo Clinic, Cedars-Sinai, Rush in Chicago, Veterans Association. So and it grows constantly purely from word of mouth. We don't do any marketing. We're very small. We're only 20 people. So it's very much driven by the efficacy. So where we focus all our efforts in the research, clinical trials, publishing papers, and then sending it to any doctor or therapist who wants to try it, give it to their patients. And from there, the word spreads, because if it is genuinely useful, then doctors will be extremely excited to share it with other doctors, because everyone's looking for non-invasive solutions to problems, solutions which don't have any side effects. So that's a really great place to be in our space. It is difficult to get to that point where it's an effective FDA approved, reimbursement approved device. But once you get there, then your biggest evangelists are the doctors and the nurses and the therapists who see their patients benefiting hugely, and they then go and tell all their contacts.
Right. So assuming we have people that are running those clinics and things like that, know that you have 2 streams of content that you're putting out for people to be able to understand this. One is, as I understand it, more related to the healthcare professionals. Let's talk about that one first for a little bit, because I think it's important for people to understand that the amount of information that is available on that, from that angle.
Yes. So, and it's a really important point. So while the work we do is medical and it's very much driven by the doctors telling us what to build and what will work, the goal is to make it very pleasurable. Because and just staying on the topic of pelvic pain, if we make the contraption clinical and scary, like let's say steel clamps, it might still be very effective, but the user may not want to use it. And that has traditionally been the biggest barrier with sexual health devices, is if they're not sexy, people, unless they are really struggling and their doctor says you must use it, they try and avoid it. So one of the first things we were told by our chief medical officer and also by all the doctors we've worked with is you have to make it, you can't make it intimidating. It needs to be something that someone on their own or as a couple would be very happy to have in their bedroom as a toy. And that's where the toy piece comes in. Yes, it is, FDA and clinical and all of that stuff. But if we can't present it as a nice, sexy device that you or you as a couple want to play with, then it would never get adopted. So, and a really good example are condom ads. So when you see ads for, say, Trojan or Durex, they're always about having fun. They're never about being a medical. They're also, FDA medical products, but you would never see a condom ad which says, hey, here's an FDA medical device, please use it, right? And that's a really good example of why sexual health is very nuanced. It's very different from all other health, because let's say, if you have diabetes and someone says you need to, buy this really horrible looking device and attach it to your body and monitor your sugar levels all the time, otherwise you're going to die, you'll do it, right? You don't care that it looks bad. But it doesn't really work like that in sexual health. It needs to be very pleasurable. It needs to be very welcoming, very easy to introduce. So the two elements, one obviously is the healthcare side, and it has all the information, background research, our research, published papers, etc. And then the other side, which is MysteryVibe, is very much driven by how do you improve your intimacy as a very overarching concept, which can be anything from giving each other massages, which has nothing to do with a clinical problem, to recovering from radical prostatectomy, which means removing the prostate after prostate cancer, which is extremely serious medical situation. So the goal with MysteryVibe is we're not just trying to inform you about medical issues. Maybe you have no medical issues at all, but you might still be looking for ways to improve your bedroom, improve your relationship, improve your solo pleasure, improve, just having better sex, or having more sex, whatever that is. The job to be done in that case is, if that's our goal, is giving you really actionable information where it's bullet points. It's like, here's a great playlist you can play to get in the mood. Here's a room temperature you can set because it's scientifically proven to help with the right amount of temperature to help with blood flow. These are really good lubes you can buy that we know are very reliable and safe. They're very simple things like that.
Well, it is the little blue pill for business. Yeah. So people are understanding, one, how important their sexual life is to the function of their business, which to some people sounds a little contradictory, but it has been proven time and time again. So we will get into that, but I still want to get into the medical side of things. Is what is that website? Where do people go to find kind of the white papers and all that kind of fun stuff? And then we'll get into the actual fun stuff.
Yeah. So actually,
Hmm?
MysteryVibe.com has everything. So there is a health section which has everything. So I think the one you were talking about is MySexMD, which is our medical only site. And the reason we created that was because the doctors wanted a very simplified site with very little content, just the basics, like instructions, without anything else. So if, let's say, someone in their 70s or 80s come to them saying, I want a very simple way to find out how to use this device. Yeah, very basic. So we created that website, which is a really stripped down version of MysteryVibe, which just has medical research and the product guides from various conditions. However, I would say, for everyone, and that's what we promote from a marketing perspective, is to go to MysteryVibe, because MysteryVibe has everything. It has the medical stuff, it has the health stuff, it has the journal papers, but equally it has articles about where can you find really good lubes, where can you find audio porn, for example, where some guides on how to give massages to each other, but equally menopause, prostate cancer, pelvic pain. So the whole gamut of content, both in pleasure and medical, is in MysteryVibe.
Right. Awesome. The area of this that I find particularly fascinating is that, again, people need to really understand how much their sexual health, if you want to use the word, penetrates into the rest of their life, in that, if we're experiencing pain on a daily basis, we can't necessarily be thinking about things creatively because we get distracted by the pain on a constant basis, and it just kind of takes us out of that creative mode. The other thing that can happen is that if our partner is experiencing something that is inhibiting that sexual relationship between the two of you, that oftentimes the conversation becomes cumbersome and awkward or blaming, as opposed to how do we actually resolve this and how do we work towards this. So looking at it as kind of a conversation that we want to start having, how do you guys package your products and services to be able to kind of have those conversations and to make it something playful and light?
Yep. Yes. I would say it's the most important question, because you could make the best devices which can solve the toughest problems, and they could be amazingly effective, but even if you find out, if you can't introduce that into the bedroom, into your life, into your sex life, then it's pointless, right? So the way we do it is we try to provide catalysts for conversations. So give you an example. Let's say someone wants to talk about performance anxiety, which is a different way of looking at erectile dysfunction. So, having difficulty with either getting erect or maintaining an erection, either prior to sex or during sex. Yeah. Now, what often it's very difficult for either, the person struggling with it or their partner to bring it up the first time. So where we, and this is a generic suggestion we have for people, is when it's something complex that you don't know how to talk about, find an article in a paper that you both trust. So let's say if you both trust New York Times, there will be an article about, and it doesn't have to be explicitly ED, because that might be something you don't want to say. It might be about anxiety, which is a much more generic thing. And it might be about anxiety and its impact on sex, right? Because 40% of erection issues are psychogenic, which means it's in the mind, not in the body. So if they once you find that article, and there will always be content that you will find online which you trust, and we list them as well. So then you share it with your partner. Hey, I read this in NYT, and it's about anxiety and how it's affecting couples and how it's affecting their sex life, and how it's a very common thing and everyone's struggling with it. Interesting. That's it. And then you leave it at that. You don't say whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, and you find out what the other person has to say. And that protects you from the fear of rejection, which is the main reason why people don't talk. Yeah, when it comes to conversations in sexual health, most people don't talk about things because they're worried that their partner will reject them. And by doing this, you have this shield, this protective barrier, where the worst thing that will happen is your partner will say, oh, that's horrible. How can NYT write about it? And that's it, right? The best thing that will happen is like, oh, that's really true. It's something we are experiencing. Let's figure out what we can do to solve it. Yeah. So the and the other thing that is beautiful about that is once you share that, and if your partner is open to it, that gives you the catalyst to then research related content, articles, talks, videos, etc., together to then become very knowledgeable and have that free-flowing conversation, which once it starts, it's very easy to continue. And then bringing in devices, whatever it is, pills, is straightforward, because you're like, okay, this is nothing special for us. Everybody's having this problem. There are lots of solutions. Let's see which one works for us. And that's a really nice place to be, where you've overcome that barrier of, should I talk about it? What's he or she going to think about it? To, oh, we're cool. Most people have this issue. There are proper solutions out there. We'll find the one that works for us. Right. So that's the long, it is not a short thing. And we discourage people from going down the short thing, which means sit down, have a chat direct, because the risk of doing that is the other person, it might say, oh, I didn't want to talk about that. And then both of you would shut down, have block in your mind that, oh, we can't talk about this. So it can cause more problems than solve something by going cold and having a conversation about a topic you're not sure about.
Well, and one of the things that I like about the way that your company approaches things is that there are a multitude of ways to be able to bring up the conversation, whether it's through the blogs, the articles, through the different information that you give out, or the different products and services that are available for the different reasons. So it's not just necessarily a, hey, let's try this. It's hey, it sounds like there's something here that might be able to help us, regardless of the situation. Yep. Mm-hmm. I love it. So MysteryVibe.com. Yes.
Yep.
Let's make sure that when you go there, I will, of course, have all the links in the show notes, so you can go and check those out. Be sure to connect. Is there a way that people can best start that journey with you, other than going off the website and just start to order things? Or
so no, I would say, definitely the content is probably the first thing I would recommend. Read, research, see if the devices make sense for you. But equally, we welcome people to email us directly. And sadly, not many people do. Which is why we are very happy. So my email is soum@mysteryvibe.com, and you can add that in the notes. We genuinely want people to email us. We do not get flooded by emails. It's not common for people to email a sex company. It's just not. So whereas we get our best ideas, we create the best content, both visual and because we have this beautiful playbook where we draw pictures. It's all hand drawn, in our offices, to help, whether it's with pelvic pain or pleasure, it doesn't matter. But we create these beautiful drawings to help people with visual guides. And most of that comes from outside, from customers, from doctors, from patients. Very few of those, like we might, in our book, I think there are maybe 100 positions, and maybe we did 10 or 20 max ourselves, and we created the other 80 based on feedback. So we truly want people to email us, because it's one of those areas of health where people don't talk about things publicly. We don't really expect many people to leave a review on a review site, for example. So the most discreet way is definitely email, or our contact us page. It also comes to us. It makes no difference. So contact us page or email, and we value them hugely because we don't get many of them.
Well, one of the interesting things I found about this podcast particularly is that it's probably one of the cleanest shows that we've done, despite the fact that it's directly about sex toys. And I do want to emphasize that I think there is a direct correlation between having a healthy sex life and a healthy business, is very much a direct correlation. So if you're finding that the areas of your business are becoming stagnant and it's just not working for you, you might want to look in the bedroom and see what's going on there because of that. And sometimes we do things subconsciously, sometimes, what, 80, 90% of the time we do.
And even wider than that, health generally. So good sexual health leads to better immunity, better skin, better sleep, and other things, because all of it is to do with hormones in our bodies. And the hormones that are released as a result of orgasms, like oxytocin, hang on, what is
the other
that
happy
one?
drugs that pop
The
around inside of our bodies.
hormone.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm forgetting the word, but dopamine, and there's a third one. But those three main hormones then lead to three big things: immunity, skin, and sleep, but also other things like mental health. So there is a direct correlation between orgasms and getting out of depression, which is clinically proven. It's quite difficult because if you have depression and you're on drugs to combat depression, that also suppresses your libido or eliminates it even. And it becomes almost impossible to feel aroused, which becomes a vicious cycle. So we have an article actually on women's health when a journalist used one of our devices who was on depression drugs, and then that helped her get out of the depression drugs, because she started to feel happier. But it was like months after she started on drugs. Like she eventually, like her friend convinced her, you have to try this to have fun, because bring some fun into your life. And that led to her getting out of her depression drugs. So if you look up women's health depression vibrator, you'll find that article.
Love that. So MysteryVibe.com. And now I want to kind of change the direction of the conversation just a little bit to the business of sex toys. So in your experience, what was the difference? What were some of the biggest differences that you noticed between doing the work with the optometrist to the sex toys? I can only but imagine there's been a few.
It's such a different business that I don't even know where to start. So what I did before was biomedical applications in defense. So let me quickly explain what I did. So I used to build cameras. So the whole thing, the software, the hardware, everything. So we built cameras to recognize people. Yeah. even though it was biomedical because you have to work with doctors to create it, the application was military in defense and security in airports, etc. And my interaction was with, say, Pentagon as an example, right? Like here's cameras. This is how it works. You could install them in secure facilities, so when people walk, they can get recognized and go in, etc. So it was a purely B2B business. Very few in terms of number of clients. I think we only had 10. Very big per client revenue, yeah, because it's defense contracts, and very simple in a way. Of course, it's complex to build the tech and make sure it works really well, but very simple to maintain a B2B business, because once you have a contract, it kind of goes on forever, right? So I didn't imagine what this would be when I started it, because and I like the lessons from 0 to 1, which is Peter Thiel's book, because it says the reason all the people who worked in PayPal did really well after PayPal is because everything went wrong in PayPal. So when they were building PayPal, no one wanted to use online payments. It was a massive uphill battle, and they struggled in every way. Yeah, and they learned the most from that, and that's why they then went on to create great companies like LinkedIn, Tesla, etc. I had the exact opposite, where I had the easiest possible startup, which was accidental. My PhD became a company and it got acquired. It's brilliant, but I was not ready for where everything is challenging. So devices, building medical hardware is very expensive. Doing clinical trials, very expensive. There's no guarantee it's going to work, and in most cases it never works the first time, and didn't for us either. Having to go back to investors every year saying, yeah, I thought I'm going to do it, but I need to go back to the drawing board again because it didn't work, and telling them I need 10 years, otherwise we're not going to get anywhere. Then going back to drawing board, then in a year's time realizing it hasn't worked, but we're getting a bit closer, so it's positive. Then trying again, and like in 5 years time, like, oh, this finally works and it's not bad. Now we can do something with it, and then going through regulatory approval, then going through clinical trials and getting papers, then getting doctors. It's such a long journey, right? It's very, very painful, but it's really exciting at the end of that journey, because then it's like a flywheel effect where you've created something which works in an area which is big without many solutions. Yeah. So like 80 plus % women after childbirth has pelvic pain, and there's hardly any solution apart from going to therapy. Yeah. And so and our device, it has a 5x improvement, which is clinically proven. And then the doctors try it, and then they're like, okay, this actually works. It's complete word of mouth. So it's a brilliant place to be in healthcare, but it takes 10 years to get there. So it is such a big difference between where I was before, where I was really in defense, even though I was a biomedical engineer applying biomedical, but I was in the defense industry, which I think is, having done that, is super easy compared to the medical industry, where there are so many layers, and then including reimbursement, patients wanting to use it. Like that itself is a huge problem in sexual health. Like, you might make the best device, you've ticked every box, you've got reimbursement, you've got everything. The patient says, oh, I don't like it, I don't want to use it because it's scary. So this is so many things. I can't think of anything else I could possibly do which has more variety. Like, we build our own software, we build our own hardware, we do our own PCB, we do our own marketing, we don't do our own clinical trials. We give that to hospitals to do. We leave that to be completely independent. We then manage our own regulatory compliance. Yeah. So We do everything ourselves.
Wow. And I was going to say, clinical trials must have been an interesting adventure over, anything else.
So
As far as
my
clinical trial
my
goes.
my my take on clinical trials is, as long as you're patient, you will get there. The thing is, so, the vulvodynia trial, okay, vulvar pain, we started maybe 3.5 years ago. Still hasn't finished. It got stuck during COVID. That was one thing. But the thing is, if you keep emailing or calling the doctors and asking them, they'll get very annoyed. You just have to, so my frequency is like once every 6 months. I check in to say, hey, can I help you with anything? And that's it. So I think that is the key to clinical trials, is especially when you're relying on big hospitals, large government organizations to run it, because that's where the big credibility comes from, not us doing it privately, where you can throw a lot of money and get something done quickly. But like the vulvodynia trial is with NHS, which is the government health service in UK. When the paper comes out, it will be, really well regarded worldwide, because everybody knows that they would do things properly when they do a trial. So that's what we care about, is the credibility. And also, we're not a big pharma with money to do private big trials. So what we do instead, in order to get feedback, is direct to consumer. So the reason we do direct to consumer, which we don't necessarily need to do, because we could just work with doctors and the doctors would either sell it to their patients or recommend it. The problem with that is we don't interact with the patients directly if it's via a doctor, unless they have a support issue, which is very rare. So what we decided to do is, in order to get to something significant like 100,000 users, which is impossible to do in a clinical trial unless you're Pfizer and you are willing to spend tens, maybe more than tens of millions to get to that level. Because if you think of, say, the COVID vaccine trial, that was 50,000 people, and they must have spent a lot of money on that to get 50,000 data points. So that's not an insignificant amount of money. So because that was not an option, because our trials maximum are 300 people. That's it. Yeah, which is plenty in the trial world. But to get to 100,000, we purely ran it as a direct to consumer. So what we did is we went to every single channel, social channel, went through compliance. Again, very long process, because it's the medical compliance on, if you want to say do marketing on Facebook, Microsoft, wherever, you go through their compliance team, you submit all the evidence, you say, okay, these are all the things we're going to claim in the marketing, and this is the evidence, and then months later you get approved. So we did that, and then that's what made it really easy for us to scale. Setting up the channels is obviously very time consuming, but once you set up the channels, it's just a matter of optimizing spend. So that's how we reached people, created that education where we can educate you directly in your Facebook feed, or in your Twitter feed, in your Google feed, whatever, and then be able to drive that traffic and, if relevant, sell a device to you. So that's how we got to 100,000 users. And the key thing with that is, because they have paid money to buy it, even though it's FSHS, so it's a bit cheaper than full price, but they have paid their own money to buy it, they will make sure if they have a problem, they'll tell us. Right? It's not something they would hide. So we got so much feedback in the early years. Now, because we are 10 years old, we hardly get, which is what I was saying, we hardly get any emails, which is why we want people to email us. Because once a device is stable, there's not that many things you can change about it, which is great. So that's where, that's kind of how we did it in terms of scaling the user base.
Well, I have so many questions for you, but I'm going to leave that for everybody else to send in their questions to you and get their curiosity answered that way. So you've been absolutely awesome. Any last words for our peeps?
If from a business perspective, I think the only thing I've learned, especially having done this as my second one, with the first one being too easy, is perseverance. And it's just, it applies to anything. A medical trial is probably the extreme end of that, where you genuinely have nothing in your control. You just have to wait. But even with product design, knowing that it will take maybe 2 to 3 times what you think it will take, and being okay with it, or better, assuming it from the start, that if you think something's going to take a year, it might take 2 years or more. And same with budget. If you think it's going to cost $1 million, it probably costs 2. Is the key, I think, to general startup success, because lots of people have ideas, and lots of people can do execution, but often they don't persevere, because you just hit with barriers all the time, right? And that's very common, and that's what I expect, because the whole point of doing a startup is doing something new that no one's done before, or doing something better that somebody's done before but not as good. So there will definitely be barriers all the time, but if you plan ahead that you'll need more time, you'll need more money than you think you will, and you bring your investors, your team members, everyone on the journey, then you can persevere. And I think most people who persevere are successful. It's not that 99% of startups die. It's more that 99% of companies which start don't get past n number of years. But I think if they do get past n number of years, whatever that is, maybe 5, then they are very likely to be successful. And however you measure success, it doesn't have to be a unicorn, but they will be successful because they have contributed something by creating the startup.
Love it. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, and I know how valuable it is.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's awesome. Peeps, this is Michelle Nedelec, your mistress in business. Thank you for being here today. Be sure to subscribe to the show and invite your friends. We can help you get it up when you need me, because we love having you here. Thank you for listening to the Little Blue Pill for Business podcast with your mistress in business, Michelle Nedelec. Why are you still here? Go to littlebluepillforbusiness.com and get your goodies. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to share it with somebody else that you know would enjoy getting it up in business, after you subscribe to the podcast, of course, so you won't miss any future episodes. Now, check the notes for links. Oh, and only tell your wife if she's into this, entrepreneurship. And I'll see you both on the other side.